everyone, and welcome to PowerPoint 6. This week we'll be talking about the New England and Middle colonies. So we kind of left off last week where the colonies were starting to be established and Europeans were starting to come over into North America and establish along the East Coast. And Jamestown became the first successful colony because they grew tobacco and John Rolfe made them successful. And then colonies started to develop along the coastline. So that's kind of where we left off. So we're going to talk about the New England colonies. This was located up in more from like Maine down to Massachusetts. Okay, so pretty much up in the far northeastern part of the United States. So we have colonists traded with Native Americans, but conflicts occurred. Settlers often moved onto Native American land without permission or payment. So as these colonists were coming into the New World, they were expecting a lot of things from the Native Americans. They were expecting the Native Americans to help them, but they were also expecting to be able to just live on the land, which wasn't very realistic. The Native Americans often got fed up with them pretty quickly. So in 1675, King Philip's War occurred. So Metacomet waged war against the colonies. So he was the leader, the Native American leader, and he persuaded other tribes to join in. So they were challenging the colonists. Basically, they were going to see if the colonists were willing to fight for this land. Well, the colonists won, and the Native Americans were pretty much forced out of New England. This would be a theme for the next 200 years. This is going to keep happening and keep happening and keep happening. Native Americans are trying to stand up for what they first had, which was their land, when the settlers are arriving, and they will continue to keep losing. That pretty much keeps happening for the next 200 years. All right, so like I said, the New England colonies, which now you can look at this right here, and Massachusetts, you can see the map right here. Massachusetts on the top, New Hampshire, Massachusetts again, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Now, Massachusetts, the top one, is now currently Maine and Vermont. And so what we know as Maine and Vermont was North Massachusetts. Okay, so the things that were grown and harvested and used in these New England colonies, which was in North Massachusetts, was furs, lumber, and cattle. South Massachusetts, which is actually present-day Massachusetts, was cattle, grain, rum, and iron. And then you had New Hampshire, which was created, they harvested furs and lumber. And then you have Connecticut, which is present-day Connecticut, was cattle and iron. And then little bitty Rhode Island, which is still little bitty Rhode Island, it was rum and iron. So, and then everything along the coastline was ships, fish, and whales. Whale hunting was very, very popular during this time and was all the way into the 1800s. The way that the oil inside the whale, like pretty much fat whale blubber, was what lit the kerosene lanterns, but oil lamps back then looked like kerosene lanterns, but they were oil based back then. So that's why whale farming, or basically it's not farming, but killing of whales and using them, that's why it was so popular. Okay, so our vocabulary for this week is dissent, which is to disagree with or oppose an opinion. Persecute, to mistreat a person or a group on the basis of their beliefs. We talked about persecute last week. People were being persecuted for their religious beliefs, and so they were fleeing where they were living. Then there's tolerance, which is the ability to accept or put up with different views or behaviors. So persecute and tolerance are pretty much the opposite of each other. Tolerance would be, I don't have the same beliefs as you, but I'm willing to sit right next to you, or I'm willing to get along with you or work with you. based off of that. And persecution is, in fact, the opposite. I can't be around you and you can't be part of my society if you're not going to be the same as me. Patroon is a landowner in the Dutch colonies who ruled over large areas of land. And then you have pacifists, were people opposed to the use of war or violence to settle disputes. So pacifists were real common during wartime, and it still is today. People who think that violence is not the answer. I don't think violence is the answer, but sometimes war is inevitable, in my personal opinion. So, but pacifists, that's what, someone that's against war is that's what they are called. All right, so we are going to talk about a little bit about New York here. So you can see we just talked about New Hampshire, Massachusetts. Over here in the map on the right-hand side, you can see New York kind of ran along the edge of what would have been New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. Some of it is still present-day New York, and some of it is not. Some of it is part of, it goes a little bit further over to the west, New York does. So New York originally was called New Netherlands. New York was located between New England and Maryland and Virginia. So it was kind of between all of those right there. And New Netherlands was desired by England because it had a good seaport with access to the Hudson River. So if you know what New York looks like today, there's Manhattan Island. And Manhattan Island has a great port and a great bay in there, and it feeds from the Hudson River. So it was very desirable. People could travel the Hudson River and go upstate or up into the middle of the colony down by going through the Hudson River. It was the center of shipping to and from the Americas. So New York became the center of shipping at that time, especially for the East Coast. So England took over the colony by sending a fleet to New Amsterdam, and the colony surrendered without a fight. So basically, the colony was ran by colonists originally, but then England was so interested in it, it wanted to control the colony without the colonists having a say, so they took over the colony. And New York was governed by the Duke of York. So once England took over the colony, they sent a duke there to start controlling the area. So the colonists no longer had control over the area. The area was a proprietary colony, which means it was owned by the people, and the colony was controlled by owners until 1691. So until 1691, the people basically owned it. And then England started to take over at that time. All right, moving on to our next slide, which is New Jersey. So New Jersey is going to be south of New York, and we have East Jersey and West Jersey, which is green and purple on our map over here. When the Duke of York received the land, so the Duke of York was controlling New York, he gave a portion of it to William Berkeley. So he gave East and West Jersey to William Berkeley and Jacques Cartier. They renamed it New Jersey. And then they split it into East and West. Settlers came to New Jersey for freedom of religion. And basically, they wanted to not have to worry about their religious beliefs. They also wanted trial by jury, which means that if you're convicted of something, people that are your peers, citizens of the community, would be the ones that convict you, not just a single judge. And representative assembly. So that means that they wanted people to... So I choose one person to go represent my opinion in the government. And that's how society in America works now today anyway. We vote for representatives who go and talk in Congress for us. Okay, so that was New Jersey. Next we have Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania was located to the west of New Jersey, okay, and you can see it over here. It was established kind of right there. It's in the kind of the lightest yellow color there. William Penn received land in payment for a debt he owed to his father from the King of England. So imagine that. Truly imagine this. The king of England owes a debt to a man. And so what does he do? He gives him a chunk of land in the New World. Must have been some kind of debt, right? So William Penn gets this piece of land in the New World, and he founded Pennsylvania based off of religious freedom. So basically every one of these colonies that is becoming established and everything, they base them off of what they really desire, religious freedom or representative government or something like that, because they wanted people to live there. The more people they lived there, the more people that would pay taxes or more people that would buy goods or trade goods, and so they would be able to make money. The natives were treated well in Pennsylvania because William Penn negotiated treaties and believed they should be paid for their land. So he said, we can't just take their land, we have to pay them for their land. The colony used elected representatives to run the legislature. So legislature is representative government and a branch of the government. So they elected their representatives. Delaware was created when the Swedes settled a portion of Pennsylvania. So a portion of Pennsylvania became later Delaware. And Penn allowed them to just keep their piece of land and their own government. So people were coming over and establishing their own kind of beliefs and everything, and Penn just allowed them to keep what they had there and create Delaware. Oh, that's the end of our slides. Sorry, I didn't realize we were already at the end. So that is the end of this PowerPoint for this week. We had a lot to talk about with our colonies that we went through. So make sure you're taking good notes. Your 9 weeks test is coming up really soon, and you want to make sure you're getting all these notes put into your spiral. Remember that you need to be writing in complete sentences on your PowerPoint questions. Make sure you're using these PowerPoints or your notes to answer the questions and not Google. And that's pretty much it for this week.